Welcome to section 3. In this section we're going to start using some of the many existing third-party Grunt plugins to create a rock-solid professional development workflow. Videos in this section will cover plugins such as JSHint, CoffeeScript, Sass, and minification. Running static analysis. We'll make a start in this video by looking at a common static analysis tool, JSHint. But first let's just take a moment to understand what static analysis is. When JavaScript runs in a browser, the browser evaluates it and executes it. In this case, the code is dynamic. Running JavaScript is a great way to detect bugs because the dynamic code that is actually running in the browser will crash with an error message and a line number, and we can start to debug it. But this approach is slow because we have to run the code every time we want to test it. Static analysis, on the other hand, is inspecting the code without actually running it. The code isn't being executed, so it isn't dynamic. We can't find as many bugs this way, but it's much quicker because we don't actually execute the code. Humans are capable of performing static analysis. Every time we read a piece of code, that's basically what we're doing, analyzing the code in its static form. The problem with this approach is that humans read and comprehend things pretty slowly, orders of magnitude slower than a computer. A lot of time is wasted when humans run code in order to debug it. With static analysis, we, or the computer at least, can analyze the code and spot obvious errors very quickly and report these issues to us so that we can fix them before we get to the stage where we're actually running the code. This way we can avoid wasting time fixing silly errors like global variables that should be local, missing semicolons, and syntax errors. So first of all, we'll need to install the JSHint Grunt plugin. We can do this from the command line by running this command inside our project folder. This will install the JSHint plugin locally to our project and update our package.json file to specify this package as a dev dependency, just like Grunt itself. The contrib part of the plugin name tells us that this is a plugin created and maintained by the official Grunt development team. Now we need to configure the plugin. In the last section we added quite a bit of example code to our Grunt file. We're not going to make use of this example code from this point forward. So let's just clean up our Grunt file, ready to start adding the configuration for the third-party tasks that we're going to be installing in this section. And let's just delete the sumfile.js example file at the root of our project. We can keep the one in the JS folder for now. So first of all, we need to load some configuration for the JSHint task. Remember, any task that is running automatically looks for a config object with the same name as the task. So we should start out by adding a JSHint object to our configuration. Now we need to use the files object to specify the files that we want JSHint to operate on. We can use the files object format for this task, and as the task won't be creating any new files, we only need to worry about the source files. We don't need to specify the destination files. And let's say we want JSHint to operate on all of the JavaScript files inside our JS folder. We've used a glob here to specify that any file ending in .js in the JS folder or any subdirectories of this folder should be linted. Paths in Grunt are usually relative to the Grunt file, which is at the root of the project. Next, we need to load the JSHint task. The sumfile.js file that we created earlier in the course will get matched by the pattern that we've specified as the src for the JSHint task. So let's just open this file up now and add some lint. We can create a variable and omit the semicolon from the end of the declaration. So now let's go back to the Grunt file and add a task alias for the default task. And now let's go back to the command line and run the default Grunt task. So the JSHint task runs and it tells us what file has a lint error in it, and it tells us what line number the error is on and what the error is. And in this case, it tells us that we're missing a semicolon. So we can go back and correct that. And now let's go back and run our JSHint task once again. And this time the task completes successfully, and it tells us that one file was linted and it is lint free. As well as the files configuration property, JSHint supports a number of different useful options, so I'd encourage you to have a look at the documentation up on GitHub to see what else it can do. So in this video we saw how to install, configure and run the popular JSHint static analysis grunt plugin. In the next video we'll move on to look at transcompiling CoffeeScript.